When I went to my sister's wedding, I found a photo of me taped under every table with the word liar written on it. I asked her why, and she said, "You deserve to be exposed." My aunt pulled me aside and whispered, "She knows what you did 5 years ago." But I didn't. Until someone emailed me the full story, and it was a setup. It started off as a normal wedding. Well, as normal as a wedding can be when you're related to the bride. There's always stress, always drama, always that one family member who drinks too much and makes a scene. I figured the biggest disaster of the night would be my Uncle Paul falling into the cake again, like he did at my cousin's reception last year. But no. Apparently, the biggest disaster of the night was me. I should have known something was off when I walked into the venue and felt the shift in the air. You know that weird feeling you get when people have been talking about you, and suddenly, you walk into the room? Yeah, that. I chalked it up to wedding nerves. Bianca, my younger sister, had always been a little high-strung, and since it was her big day, I figured maybe people were just tense. Or maybe I was just imagining it. I wasn't. The first real clue was at dinner. I sat down at my assigned table, adjusting my dress and making small talk with my cousin Leo. Everything seemed fine, until I pulled my chair closer and noticed something weird underneath the table. A piece of paper. I reached under and peeled it off. It was a photo. Of me. It took me a second to process it. The picture was old, grainy, slightly curled at the edges, like it had been printed years ago. But it was definitely me. And right across my face in thick red marker was one word: liar. I felt a strange chill crawl up my spine. What the HLL? I muttered, flipping the photo over. But there was nothing on the back. Just my own confused reflection staring back at me in the glossy paper. Leo leaned over. "What is that?" I showed him, my stomach twisting. It was taped under the table. He frowned. Then, curiosity getting the better of him, he reached under his own seat. A second later, he went rigid. "Jesus," he whispered. He pulled out a photo, another one of me. Same picture. Same word. I pushed back my chair so fast it scraped against the floor. My heart pounded as I moved to the next table. I ducked under and yanked at the tape. Another photo. Liar. I checked another table. And another. And another. By the time I got to the fifth table, my hands were shaking. There was a photo of me under every single table. A sick feeling curdled in my stomach. My skin felt hot and tight, my ears ringing as I looked around at the guests. Some had started to notice my frantic movements. A few people were whispering, their eyes darting toward me before quickly looking away. And then I saw her. Bianca. Standing near the head table, watching me. And smiling. Not a soft, sweet smile. Not the smile of a bride on the happiest day of her life. No. It was a knowing smile. A sharp, satisfied, cat that caught the canary kind of smile. My heart slammed against my ribs. I marched straight to her, gripping one of the photos in my hand like a weapon. "What the HLL is this?" I demanded, shoving it toward her. She glanced at it, took a slow sip of her champagne, and tilted her head. "Oh," she said lightly. "You found one. Bianca, what is this supposed to mean?" My voice came out uneven, but I didn't care. People were staring now. Guests were turning in their seats, forks clinking against plates as conversations dropped into murmurs. Her eyes flicked around the room, clearly aware of the attention we were drawing. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, she said, "You deserve to be exposed." The entire ballroom went still. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. "What?" I breathed. A warm hand suddenly gripped my wrist. I turned and saw my Aunt Maria standing beside me. Her lips were tight, her brows drawn together in something that looked almost like pity. She leaned in close and whispered, "She knows what you did 5 years ago." I stared at her, my pulse thundering. "What?" Maria squeezed my wrist tighter. "She found out. About what happened back then. She wanted to make sure everyone else knew too." My mouth went dry. "I don't." My voice cracked. "I don't know what you're talking about." Maria sighed. Her eyes flickered toward my phone, sitting on the table behind me. "Check your email," she murmured. "It's all there." My fingers felt numb as I reached for my phone. My stomach twisted violently as I opened my inbox. One new email. No subject. No sender name I recognized. I hesitated. Then, my hands trembling, I tapped it open. And then I read. And read. And read. By the time I finished, my hands were ice cold. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. Because now, I knew exactly what Bianca thought I had done. And I knew one other thing too. It was a setup. It had been a setup all along. I lifted my head, and for the first time, I really looked at Bianca. And I saw it. The way she was standing. The way her hands curled around the stem of her glass. The slight twitch at the corner of her mouth, like she was trying so hard not to smirk. She knew exactly what she had done. She had planned this. She had been waiting for this moment. And she thought I was going to crumble. But the thing is, Bianca never really understood me. She never really knew what I was capable of. And if she thought this was over, oh, she had no idea what was coming next. My fingers were ice cold around my phone, the email staring back at me like an open wound. My brain felt like it was short-circuiting, trying to make sense of what I had just read. Bianca framed me. Not just today. Not just with the photos under the tables. But 5 years ago. And now, she was standing in front of me, basking in my humiliation, like a queen watching her enemy kneel. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. My mind kept flashing back 5 years ago. What was I doing? What could I have possibly done that would make her want to expose me like this? Except I hadn't done anything. And yet, here we were. A cold, twisting rage settled deep in my gut. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself. I wasn't about to cause a scene. Not yet. Not without knowing exactly what she thought she had on me. So instead of screaming, instead of demanding answers, I pocketed my phone and leveled my gaze at her. "You're sure about this?" I asked quietly. Bianca's smug expression barely faltered. "Oh, I'm very sure." A beat of silence stretched between us. Then I turned and walked away. I could feel her watching me, waiting for a bigger reaction, waiting for me to break down in front of the entire wedding party. Not today, BTCH. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, downed half of it in one go, and slipped through the crowd toward the lobby. My hands were still shaking, but I needed a second to think. The moment I stepped outside, the cool air hit me like a slap. My thoughts were racing, my pulse erratic. I pulled out my phone again, opened the email, read it one more time, and this time I paid attention. Because whoever sent this, they wanted me to know the truth. The email wasn't just some accusation. It was a full breakdown, messages, screenshots, old security footage, everything. And piece by piece, it unraveled something I never saw coming. 5 years ago, Bianca had set me up. 5 years ago, she had ruined my life in a way I never even realized. I scrolled through the evidence, my stomach twisting. The messages were edited, twisted, turned into something they weren't. Conversations I barely remembered were manipulated, timestamps altered. Bianca had gone out of her way to fabricate an entire story, and I had walked around for 5 years, completely blind to what she had done. Until now, a wave of nausea hit me. I gripped the edge of a planter, breathing deeply. This wasn't just petty wedding drama. This was something deeper, something that had been simmering for years in the background of my life. I should have seen it. The subtle coldness, the passive-aggressive remarks, the way Bianca would avoid certain topics whenever I was around. And now, this grand, dramatic performance of revenge for something I never even did. She wanted to destroy me, and she thought she had. But she was about to find out just how wrong she was. Because if she wanted a war, she just got one. I stood outside the ballroom, the distant hum of laughter and clinking glasses spilling out through the doors. My stomach churned as I scrolled through the email again, the weight of it settling deeper into my bones. This wasn't just some petty grudge Bianca had been holding on to. This was calculated, methodical. And the worst part? She had been patient. 5 years. 5 years of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I gritted my teeth, my fingers tightening around my phone. I needed answers. I turned on my heel and walked back inside, weaving through the guests until I spotted the one person who would know. Aunt Maria. She was standing near the bar, her lips pressed into a tight line as she watched me approach, like she knew I was coming. I wasted no time. "You knew," I said, my voice low but sharp. Maria didn't even try to deny it. She let out a slow breath, setting her glass down on the counter. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Like what?" I hissed, stepping closer. "Like some sick joke? Like I'm a damn circus act at my own sister's wedding." Maria closed her eyes for a brief second, as if choosing her words carefully. "Bianca told us everything a few months ago." I blinked. "Us?" She hesitated. My stomach twisted. "Oh my God. Who else?" I demanded. Maria's silence was answer enough. I looked around the room, really looking this time, the way certain guests avoided my gaze. The pity in some eyes, the amusement in others. They all knew. This wasn't just Bianca's plan. This was a family secret. I took a step back, feeling like the ground beneath me wasn't steady anymore. "And not one of you thought to tell me?" My voice cracked slightly. "Not one of you thought I deserved to know?" Maria sighed. "We didn't know what to believe." I let out a hollow laugh. "You believed her." She didn't respond. I shook my head, my chest tight with betrayal. "What exactly did she tell you?" Maria hesitated again. Then, in a hushed tone, she said, "She told us you ruined her engagement." My heart stuttered. "What?" "She said 5 years ago Maria swallowed. That you had an affair with her fiancé. That you slept with him and then lied about it." I just stared at her. My brain refused to process the words. I let out a breathless, disbelieving laugh. "That's insane." Maria shifted uncomfortably. She had proof. I scoffed. What proof? Messages. Photos. A letter from him. My pulse roared in my ears. A letter. From him. From Jacob. My mind reeled, flashing back to Bianca's ex-fiancé. He had been charming, in a too perfect, too practiced kind of way. A little too smooth, a little too rehearsed. But we were never close. I barely even texted the guy. Yet somehow Bianca had proof. Proof I knew had to be fake. I looked at Maria again, my breath coming in short, uneven bursts. Did you ever think to ask me? I whispered. Did you ever think to, I don't know, confront me before deciding I was a liar? She looked genuinely guilty. We thought we were protecting Bianca. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Right. And who was protecting me? Maria's lips parted slightly, but she didn't have an answer. Of course she didn't. Because no one had. I felt something in my chest splinter, rage, grief, betrayal all twisting together into something dark and suffocating. Bianca had taken everything from me. My reputation. My relationships. My own family's trust. And now, after 5 years, she was making sure I never got any of it back. But she had underestimated me. Because if she thought I was just going to stand here and take it, she had no idea who she was messing with. I turned abruptly and stalked across the room. The wedding was still in full swing. Guests laughing, drinking, celebrating a lie. Bianca was at the center of it all. I marched straight up to her. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw me, like she had been waiting for this exact moment. Back for more, she mused, swirling her champagne. I stared at her, my blood pounding. Tell me something, I said coolly. Was this your plan all along? To ruin me? Or did you just get bored one day and decide to rewrite history? Bianca's lips twitched. I didn't have to rewrite anything. I took a step closer. The messages were fake. She didn't blink. Were they? The photos were fake. She tilted her head. The letter was fake. That made her smile. He wrote it himself, you know. I stiffened. Jacob, she said, watching me carefully. He left that letter for me before he disappeared. Told me the truth about you. My stomach turned. You mean before you drove him away? Bianca's expression flickered just slightly. Got you. I took another step forward, lowering my voice so only she could hear. See, I always wondered why he left so suddenly. But now I think I know. I paused. It wasn't me he was running from, was it? For the first time that night, Bianca faltered. It was quick, just a flicker of hesitation, the slightest shift in her stance. But I saw it. And in that moment, I knew. She wasn't as confident as she wanted me to believe. Whatever happened 5 years ago, there was more to the story. And I was about to find out exactly what she was hiding. Because if she thought she had one, she was about to learn that the game wasn't even over yet. Bianca's mask didn't slip for long. In a blink, she was back to her usual smug self, tilting her champagne glass to her lips like I wasn't standing inches away from her, seething. You're delusional, she finally said, voice light and airy. You always have been. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You want to ruin me, fine. But you'd better make damn sure I stay down. Because if you leave me standing, Bianca, I smiled, but there was nothing friendly about it. I'll burn your entire story to the ground. She hesitated. Just for a second. And that second told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't as untouchable as she thought. She had cracks in her story. I just had to find them. I didn't give her the satisfaction of watching me storm off. Instead, I turned on my heel, grabbed another glass of champagne from a passing waiter, and made my way toward the other guests, the ones who had believed her. Because if Bianca had spent 5 years spinning this lie, she hadn't done it alone. Someone helped her. Someone knew more. And I was about to make them talk. I found my first lead standing near the dance floor, picking at a shrimp cocktail like he wished he were anywhere else. Eric. He was one of Jacob's old friends. I hadn't seen him in years, but the look on his face when he spotted me? Guilt. I wasted no time. I walked straight up, my voice cool and even. Eric. His entire body stiffened. Hey. I tilted my head. You seem nervous. He let out a forced chuckle. No, just wasn't expecting to see you here. Oh. I sipped my drink. You mean at my own sister's wedding? He winced. Yeah, well, I didn't blink. You knew, didn't you? Eric swallowed. Knew what? I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. That Jacob didn't leave because of me. His throat bopped. Look, did he tell you? I pressed. Before he left? Did he tell you why? Eric glanced around the room like he was checking for Bianca. Interesting. I followed his gaze. Bianca was busy chatting with some of her bridesmaids, laughing like she hadn't just publicly humiliated me. I turned back to Eric. He did, didn't he? Eric exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. It's not that simple. It is for me, I said. Either he told you the truth, or you helped Bianca lie. Eric flinched. And that was all the confirmation I needed. You don't have to tell me everything, I said, keeping my tone calm. Just answer one question. He hesitated. I leaned in. Why did Jacob really leave? Eric sighed, looking exhausted. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear him, he said, he was scared of her. My breath caught. What? Eric glanced around again, then muttered. He told me, right before he left, that it wasn't you. That it was her. Bianca. He swallowed. He said she threatened him. That she gave him one chance to disappear before she ruined his life. I felt the blood drain from my face. Jacob hadn't left because of me. He had run from Bianca. And Bianca had used his absence to pin everything on me. I took a shaky breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Why didn't you ever tell me? Eric exhaled sharply. Because I was a coward. His eyes flicked toward Bianca again. And because she made it very clear what happens to people who cross her. My stomach turned. How many people had Bianca silenced over the years? How many had known the truth and said nothing? I took a slow, steadying breath. Do you have proof? Eric hesitated. I saw the war in his expression. The guilt, the fear, the shame. And then, finally, he pulled out his phone. Jacob sent me a message the night he left, he murmured. I never showed anyone. He scrolled for a second, then turned the screen toward me. Jacob's message, timestamped 5 years ago. I'm leaving. Don't believe anything she says about me or my name. This is the only way to get out. She won't let me go otherwise. She's not who you think she is. My breath came short and uneven. This was it. My first real piece of proof. And I had a feeling there was more where that came from. I didn't bother with subtlety anymore. If Bianca wanted me to crumble in silence, she was about to be disappointed. I made my way across the ballroom, scanning the guests with fresh eyes. How many of them had heard the story? How many had helped spread it? I was going to talk to all of them. Because now I had my first crack in her story. And once you find one crack, the whole damn thing starts falling apart. I spotted another familiar face, one of Bianca's closest friends, Sabrina. She was standing near the gift table, sipping on a cocktail, avoiding eye contact. Which meant she knew something too. I walked straight up to her. Sabrina stiffened. Oh. Hey. I didn't waste time. You've heard Bianca's story, right? She hesitated. I mean, yeah, everyone has. I cut her off. And you believed it? Her throat bopped. I smiled thinly. Let me guess. Bianca told you I slept with Jacob, and then, conveniently, Jacob disappeared before he could confirm or deny it. Sabrina's lips parted slightly. She hadn't thought about it that way. I took a slow sip of my champagne. It's funny, isn't it? That he's not here. That he never defended himself. That the only person who could prove or disprove anything is gone. Sabrina looked deeply uncomfortable. I kept going. What if I told you he left because of Bianca? That she threatened him? That she made up the entire thing to turn my own family against me? Her hand tightened around her glass. And then, quietly, she said, that I always wondered. My stomach flipped. What? Sabrina glanced around, lowering her voice. It just never added up. Bianca was so insistent, so angry. And anytime anyone asked for proof, she'd change the subject. Or she'd cry. Or she'd act like it was too painful to talk about. I exhaled slowly. And you never thought to ask why? Sabrina looked down. I didn't want to be next. Another confirmation. Bianca had been controlling the story for years, keeping people quiet. But not anymore. Because now the whispers were turning. People were starting to wonder. And once doubt creeps in, it doesn't leave. I wasn't just uncovering the truth. I was taking back control. And Bianca had no idea what was coming next. Bianca thought she had one. She thought she had humiliated me, turned everyone against me, destroyed me. But the thing about the truth? It has a way of coming out. And I was about to make sure it did. I spent the next 30 minutes working the room. I spoke to anyone who would listen. People who had once been my friends, family members who had whispered behind my back, Bianca's old bridesmaids who had always seemed a little too eager to believe the worst about me. And the more I talked, the more cracks started forming in Bianca's story. Some people were hesitant at first, unwilling to admit they had been wrong. But others? They started asking questions. Wait, why didn't we ever hear Jacob's side of the story? Bianca always got so defensive whenever we asked for proof. She told me she had texts, but I never actually saw them. Doubt was spreading like wildfire. And then I got the final piece I needed. Sabrina, one of Bianca's closest friends, finally cracked. We were standing near the bar, away from the rest of the crowd, when she blurted out, "Okay, look. I never actually saw the messages Bianca showed everyone." I narrowed my eyes. What do you mean? She swallowed. She told me she had screenshots. But whenever I asked to see them, she would get weird about it. She'd say she deleted them because it was too painful to keep them. Or she'd show me a text, but it would be just one message, out of context. My pulse quickened. She continued, her voice dropping lower. And once, this was like, right after Jacob left, I saw her messing with a photo editing app. My stomach flipped. What kind of app? Sabrina hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, a fake text generator. That was it. The final proof I needed. She faked the entire thing. And now, it was time for everyone to know. I didn't wait. I walked straight to the center of the ballroom, grabbed a microphone from the DJ booth, and tapped it twice. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me, including Bianca's. She was standing near the head table, champagne glass in hand, looking completely unbothered. Smug. Like she thought I was about to make a fool of myself again. I smiled. And then I spoke. I'd like to take a moment to congratulate Bianca on her wedding. I began, my voice calm and steady. Because let's be honest, she's worked really hard to get here. A few awkward chuckles. Some confused glances. Bianca's smile faltered just slightly. I continued. In fact, Bianca has spent the last 5 years working on something very special. A story. A story about me. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Bianca's posture stiffened. I turned my gaze directly to her. You see, for the past 5 years, Bianca has been telling all of you that I had an affair with Jacob. That I ruined her engagement. And she made sure to provide proof. A few guests nodded. They had heard the story. I tilted my head. But what if I told you? That proof never existed. Silence. A few people glanced at Bianca. I held up my phone. Eric, one of Jacob's old friends, has a message from Jacob, the night he left, saying he was running from Bianca. Not me. Eric, who had been standing near the back, visibly paled. I kept going. And Sabrina, one of Bianca's own bridesmaids, just told me that Bianca used a fake text generator to create the messages she showed everyone. Gasps. Heads whipped toward Bianca. She froze. My voice remained steady. So tell me, Bianca, if I really ruined your engagement, why did you have to fake the evidence? The room fell into a stunned silence. Bianca opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her new husband, Michael, turned to her slowly. Is this true? Bianca's eyes darted around, desperate, like she was searching for a way out. I don't know what she's talking about. Sabrina stepped forward. It's true. Bianca whipped around. Sabrina, I'm sorry, Sabrina said, voice firm. But I can't keep lying for you. Bianca's face drained of color. The whispers turned into a roar. People were staring at her now. Guests, family members, even the wedding staff. Her new husband was looking at her like he didn't even recognize her. And just like that, Bianca was exposed. I walked off the dance floor, champagne in hand, and watched as Bianca's world crumbled. Her husband stormed out of the venue. Her bridesmaids turned away from her. Guests whispered behind their hands, shaking their heads. Her own parents looked mortified. And Bianca? She just stood there, her hands shaking, her perfect wedding day ruined. Just like she had tried to ruin my life. She finally turned toward me, her eyes burning with fury. You did this, she hissed. I took a slow sip of my drink. No, Bianca. I set the glass down. You did this to yourself. She clenched her jaw, her nails digging into her palm. I'll fix this. I smiled. Good luck with that. Because this time, no one was going to believe her. I didn't stay much longer. I had done what I came to do. As I walked out of the venue, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time in a long time. I was free. And Bianca? Well, she was going to have a lot of explaining to do. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Because I had finally taken back my story. And that was the best revenge of all.